Simone, I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about the 4 a.m. Club, which is a group of Democrats that believe that when the election of Trump happened, our timeline split from the real timeline. We are in the fake or like corrupted timeline. And in this real timeline, Kamala won, and they are trying to merge these two timelines. And you had the impression when I brought this up with you that this was a small movement. When you look at their TikToks, they get millions of views. They regularly get millions of views.
Well, are they hate views though?
No, hate viewership is very rare in real life. Like people assume like our channel gets hate viewership, and yet we get like an average of like 95% upvotes. Like actual hate viewership is just not that big unless you're talking about like a literal like lolcow, like Chris Chan or something like that. And even then, a lot of people end up liking him after a while. So I don't know, Simone. I don't think it's hate views. Okay. Well, it's a big community, and as we go into this, the reason why we're going to explore this is one, it's a bit like you saying, oh, Q Anon must be a small thing because it sounds weird or discordant with social norms. Yet Q Anon was not a small thing.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
To be almost, people have said it's like progressive Q Anon, but it's very interesting to explore because it handles the conspiracy vibe of, oh, Trump didn't really win in a way that is so soaked in progressive mysticism that it is very like unique. And I think it will be fun to talk about how this is structured differently than QAnon and why. And then it's really interesting to understand like what actually goes on in the minds of those most deeply affected with the urban monoculture, those who are, this deeply cultural imperialistic. They want everyone to think like them, everyone to act like them. What goes on in terms of how their minds broke around this second Trump election? And you mentioned something to me yesterday that I thought was really telling about all this, where you said Trump derangement syndrome this time seems so much worse than it did the first time. Like people's breaks from reality are more severe than you have seen historically. And I think the reason for this is because after Trump was elected for the first time, they were living in a world of, see, now everyone who is sane sees how bad this is. This is never going to happen again. And when it happened again was a majority vote, it sort of said to them, wait, what? That world I've been living in for the past 4 or 5 years is a construction? Like it's not real? Like and people didn't think he had done a bad job. Like there's a huge percent of America that likes, and worse, it's a larger percent now of minorities. It's over 50% of Hispanic males. It was huge gains made within the Muslim community. I think it might have been a majority of Muslims in some communities, but I can't remember what the stats were there. He's growing in popularity among young people. Everyone, even the progressives, have sort of turned on mainstream news. Like it's been, I think, sort of reality shattering for people who overinvested in this particular reality framework. Thoughts?
Let me get this straight. Is basically the 4 a.m. Club a version of Trump derangement syndrome where they just can't allow for a reality in which Trump won so badly that they're just like, I'm just going to believe that Trump didn't win so hard that maybe I'll manifest that timeline?
Sort of, yeah. We'll get into it, but yes.
I need to know more. I
can post a video from a 4 a.m. Club member who is mad that Fox News made fun of them, and she's explaining why they're not crazy.
Oh, okay.
Last night, Fox News aired clips of my TikTok video about the 4 a.m. Club on the Laura Ingraham show. Some will mock it, but mocking it doesn't invalidate it. It may, in fact, confirm its power. The human eye can detect only 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum. Our nervous system is not built to perceive total reality. So when people scoff and say, well, I don't see it, it means nothing. Of course they don't. What I and thousands of other 4AMers experienced is called timeline bleed. Those of us who are sensitive can sometimes momentarily tune in to a parallel possibility.
Wow. Yeah. So this is very much, is this like a manifesting thing? Like
Well, no, what she argues is she goes, well, multiple timelines likely do exist. We can see from quantum physics,
I mean, that's fair.
like,
Sure.
electrons doing funny things that might suggest other, and therefore, but what's funny about this is she says something that is otherwise, like, I actually do believe that timelines do split occasionally. I think that
Totally.
the evidence that we have actually does suggest this.
Yeah.
But the evidence that we have also suggests there is no way you could cross one of these barriers once this has happened. You're basically just in a different part of the equation once this has happened, and there is no connecting, contacting, anything like that. So she says something that is reasonable without understanding why everyone else is like, yes, but you think you get messages from this other timeline and can reunite the two.
Well, because I think it's quite popular in fiction. The whole his Dark Materials series was on switching between essentially different timelines or universes,
This
right?
is
So
something I've noticed a lot recently, like with the Slender Man murders, right? Where the girls were gonna murder their friend to call out Slender Man.
yeah.
A lot of women, white women, particularly, let me call it like I see it, seem to read online narratives and then think that they can summon them into reality or things that they want to exist into reality through drastic action.
Hmm.
And I mean, again, if people are like, why are you calling them white? I saw who the Snape wives were. These were women who thought that they were married to Snape in real life, and
You're right.
it's a we could do a whole episode on that. Actually, I think we might have at one point.
I think we might have. Yeah, I think we did. Maybe we combined Snape wives with Etsy spells or something, but I'm pretty sure we did it.
Yeah. Anyway, look us up in Snape wives, and you'll probably find on Google. YouTube has a worse search algorithm. But anyway, the Snape wives phenomenon. Yeah. So it appears to affect mostly middle-aged white women, and that's all I'm seeing freaking out about this with the 4am club as well. So we'll get to that as well. Actually, this brings me to an interesting thing. So I'm just going to go. One of our active Discord members is a Black woman, and she was noting from being a Black woman and seeing her own family and her own American community. This is an American Black woman, not like a African immigrant or something, as far as I know, I think. Anyway, she mentioned that the types of mystical beliefs that are held by Black women are very different from the types of mystical beliefs that are held by white women.
Oh, interesting.
Specifically noting that astrology was way bigger among Black female communities than it is among, and I mean, I would at least say that astrology has sort of died out as a fad. When we were kids, it was like really, really big.
Really? I was just listening to the Red Scare podcast, and Dasha and Anna were talking about how, like, well, because I'm an earth sign, I just have a lot more trouble dealing with it in this way. Like, they just like it.
How are they Republican influencers? Can somebody explain it to me?
I'm just telling you, I guess I very much associate astrology with being a white person thing, or at least an every person thing now. When you look at like the Google search volume of astrology vis-a-vis other major philosophical bents, it just trounces them all, because that's the world we live in now. So I don't know. I wouldn't say astrology is like a Black person thing.
Well, it definitely is an Indian thing. We did an episode on witchcraft in Africa, and we'll do an episode on astrology in India if we get enough people interested in it, because they use it for like major decisions and everything like that, and it's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, it seems like if you're gonna be like serious about astrology, you should be into, what is it called, Ayurvedic astrology.
But they're not here anyway.
Yeah, because they're dilettantes. They don't actually. Again, this is soft culture. I'm not going to do the work. I'm not actually going to try. I'm just going to dabble and do whatever feels good and make my own interpretations. Whatever.
So we're going to be reading from the Susie Weiss piece, who we've had on the podcast before. I consider her a friend. This is Barry Weiss's little sister who runs the Free Press. And Susie Weiss is the only writer who I consider somebody just to watch for their writing. She's the only like journalist who I actually think is worth trying to read most of their pieces because they're so interesting. But she did a piece recently on the 4am club. And so that's the piece that we're going to be using to explore this particular movement. And it's titled,
she's great at covering online trends and cultural trends. So she's got her finger on the pulse. She's on this stuff.
Yeah. It's called If Kamala Harris Were President. It's called the 4 a.m. Club. It isn't about getting up before the sun to go out and run or to get a head start on work, but rather a confederation of spiritually inclined women who all claim to have woken up suddenly around 4 a.m. on November 6th with a sinking feeling that Donald Trump had won the election, checking their phones. Their feminine intuitions were confirmed. What's funny is these are all people who had this feeling like he was probably going to win. And then I remember going to sleep that night, and we went to sleep before the polls did anything or anything like that. I was certain he was going to win. I said many times leading up to the election, all signs that I have seen point to Donald Trump winning handedly.
100%.
And you're being gaslit by the news stations because I couldn't think of anyone other than, was it Dick Cheney, who had moved from right to left over the last election cycle. And I mean anyone. You know, there were a lot of people who were moved from the first Trump election cycle, but the second Trump election cycle, that just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I knew a lot of people who had moved from left to right. So this is where I was like, come on. But okay, so they had an intuition that reality was reality despite what their social circle was telling them. Except they didn't really believe that he won. Stick with me here.
Okay.
The 4 a.m. Clubbers believe that really we might be living in an alternate reality where Trump is president. At 4 a.m. on November 6, 2024 is when the timelines quote unquote split. And it's only a matter of time before we all realize it and can go back to the quote unquote correct timeline where Trump failed and Harris took her rightful place as chief executive. Now, here I want to note, this is actually pretty sociopathic. So what are we doing? Murdering the people in the other timeline? Like, are we like, they exist. They have split from us for quite a long time at this point. Why would we merge with? Why would that be a good thing to merge with that? Just so your your chosen president can be in office. It's so weird. But anyway, quote, I have been steadfast, so rock solid in my belief that she won, and it was only a matter of time before we go back to that timeline, end quote, said one member at Kelly Daring, who posts on TikTok, quote, my friends have looked at me like I'm crazy and told me I'm delusional, end quote.
I mean,
do say we're in an alternate timeline that we can then merge and I guess murder everyone in the other timeline. They're just like, oh no, we'll have both. Are we gonna have both sets of memories? Is that what's gonna happen? Then I would rather be two separate people with two separate sets of memory than merged into one person.
Honestly, anyway. I think maybe they just would rather not exist.
They and everything they've done since the election. I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Undo. Yeah.
And then she found others just like her. Those of us in the 4 a.m. Club viscerally experienced that timeline split. This is the vision. This is the light that we've been holding. So
I wonder what this feels like to them. What are their lived experiences of having experienced this timeline split, do you think?
I can really understand how they would get this feeling. So they're in a world, remember the progressive, you can watch many progressive like YouTubers basically having a breakdown as the numbers come in and Trump is winning, where everyone tells them everybody hates Trump. Everyone knows Trump is the bad guy. You're on the good guy side. Trump's going to get trounced. We've got a black woman running for president. This is going to be so easy. Kamala is the greatest and best candidate ever. She hasn't made any mistakes on the campaign trail. This one's in the bag. And so they have all of these things around them, right? This is the world they live in. And then reality comes. And it knocks on the door and it says, hey, what your world has been telling you is incorrect. You've been being gaslit by these people for the past 4 years. And the reality is that it turns out that actually more minority voters than ever like the Republican Party, and increasingly minorities like Trump, and increasingly young people like Trump, and increasingly poor people like Trump, and increasingly, and Hispanics who you say Trump is attacking. Why is it they like Trump? And so they get all of this evidence. And they can choose to be like, oh, my entire worldscape of information is wrong, okay? Which is what somebody with intellectual integrity would do. And I think that's actually what drove a lot of people to the Republican Party. It's one of the things that began to break me for the Republican Party is when I realized it was the first sort of Clinton thing, right? Where I realized that all of the media leading up to the election had been lying about her poll numbers.
Oh, Hillary Clinton.
And
Okay, yes.
they tried to like 538 to win, tried to be like canceled and blacklist one of the most mainstream pollsters for saying that Trump actually had a decent chance of winning. And not even that he probabilistically would win. He said Clinton still had the higher probability. But even just saying that he had a chance, they considered this. And then I was like, wait a second, I am being gaslit here, right? Like, all of you said this was in the bag and it wasn't remotely in the bag. I need to start looking for alternate sources of information. And you even see mainstream, like, when AOC was like, hey, where are you guys getting your information from? Because, clearly where I'm getting it from is not where you guys are getting it from, right? And so you're in this information bubble. Then information comes that shatters that. And I think for a lot of people, especially people with extremely mystical thought patterns, and we always talk about why mystical thought patterns are so dangerous, it is easier to believe that it is reality that is broken and not their prejudices. And this is
like, do you imagine they feel like they're living in a dream, or like?
No, for them, everything is sort of dreamlike, because when you engage in mystical thinking, we've always talked about why mystical thinking is so dangerous. And, we have our episode, if you want to go into this more, why we can't let witches on spaceships, basically arguing that actually the intuition to have a really strong stance against mystical interaction that is core to traditional Christian teaching is beneficial to humanity. And that, within our own family and teachings within Techno-Puritanism, then we go back to it. And it's because what mystical thinkings fundamentally do is they draw understandings of truth from personal subjective experiences within corrupted mental states, like on drugs or spinning or just trying to get yourself to hallucinate by thinking without the bounds of constraint, and then say, these experiences I've had are more true than things that are objective within reality and testable and logical. And then what that means is the definition of truth becomes a popularity contest where truth is defined by the mystic with the most followers or the most authority within a particular community. And that one, it often causes them to go crazy because now they have no bounds on how they logically sort of constrain their thoughts or tie their thoughts together, which appears to be not the way humans are designed to work. And so people, when they do this, go a bit nutter butters, as you often see by people who go full mystic. But in addition to that, they also sort of stamp out dissenting thought within these communities because truth is defined by the subjective experiences of the corrupted mental states of the individuals in this community who have the highest level of authority. And this is how cults start and stuff like that. So it's actually pretty standard for a cult. There were hundreds of videos with millions of views on the 4 a.m. Club videos on TikTok and additional chatter on left-wing Reddit. And their popularity was only grown since Trump's inauguration. A lot of them are made by self-proclaimed witches, mystics, mediums, clairvoyants, intuitives, and the like. Many, it seems, are nurses with autoimmune disorders. Okay, first I need to unpack this because I actually think there is more to that particular point.
Please.
So when you're like, why did they go into this to begin with? There's a lot of mystics and people who have mystical thoughts that have a high level of following already. So, on TikTok and stuff like that, especially among this urban monoculture brained woman class. And so, of course, they would have a mystical interpretation of Trump's election, right? And if it went against their prejudices, they're going to go with their prejudices because what mysticism is fundamentally a thought unconstrained by the boundaries of subjective evidence.
Right. Yeah.
The second is what's happening with nurses with autoimmune disorders. So the autoimmune disorders, I suspect in most cases, these are imagined. And what we're really looking at is spoonies and people who are looking for methods of self-victimization. And I have known girls like this where it's pretty clear that they just like being ill all the time and that they don't actually have an autoimmune disorder. And autoimmune disorders are really great if you want to pretend to be ill all the time. And some of them aren't particularly well testable.
So if you want to pretend that you're very sick and make it almost impossible for doctors to exactly tell what's going on, then say you have an autoimmune disorder or believe it, genuinely believe it.
Genuinely believe it, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can go to our Spoonie episodes, because we've done 2, one with Susie Weiss. But the other thing I wanted to discuss is a nurses thing. What's a nurse, right? A nurse is if you're going through the education system in the United States, but you're not particularly smart, so you want to go for, you're not going to get into the top doctor programs or anything like that, but you want to do the standard educational pathway. You want a bureaucratic job that is relatively safe, but decently paying. Nurse is a standard outcome. It is the standard.
Well, it's also less expensive. I mean, keep in mind, I think a lot of people who understand that there's like high job demand and they don't want to put in the time that you have to put in and the money you have to put in to.
Right. But what I'm saying is if you're talking about the woman job, like the womany woman job for Karens, no, I mean, it's an educated elite bureaucracy that's not for the very, very top performers.
Well, and yeah, to be fair, not that educated, because I've been in the hospital and had like asked nurses questions about things that are slightly outside the very specific domain of like the wing of the hospital in which they're operating. And they start talking to me about completely medically unfounded stuff that they read in.
Give an example. I remember you got very mad about this at one point.
Yeah. Like a nurse was like, well, I read in this Facebook group, this, and this. And I'm like, didn't you go to some kind of medical school to like become a nurse? It was very disconcerting. So yeah, I hear you on that.
Anyway, to continue here. Basically, the 4 a.m. club is Q Anon, but for left-wing women on TikTok who believe they are receiving messages from God in the passenger seat of their Toyota Sinais. Just as Q Anon believed the 2020 election was stolen from Trump, the 4 a.m. club believes it was stolen from Harris in 2024. Both movements see it as their job to alert the rest of the country to what's happening right under their noses. According to the 4 a.m. club doctrine, it's just a simple matter of collapsing the timelines so that we enter the correct one, where Harris is president. In other words, where the divine feminine wins. It's quote there.
The divine feminine.
Quote, it's more than just waking up in the morning, end quote, says one 4 a.m. clubber. Quote, it's about a great awakening, end quote. Whereas the most exciting thing QAnon world is getting, quote unquote, drops from Q, the supposedly high-ranking but anonymous government official who released predictions about the deep state on 8chan. 4 a.m.ers get, quote unquote, downloads from, quote unquote, spirit, as in Gaia, quote, messages from the spirit and the spiritual purpose of what's happening with ICE, end quote. I love how they attribute a spiritual purpose to they're like, we're getting this out of, I was watching some of their videos and they were like, we're getting the war karma out of the world system right now.
What I was shown and what was communicated to me through this vision is that this is a very, very uncomfortable time for people who have been refusing to see any argument, any perspective other than their own, particularly when it comes to immigration policy. That's what this glass in this dome signifies. It's never truly been hidden. It's always been there. But now the lid has been pulled off. So not only is it on full display, no excuses, we can all see it, but I was also shown this image almost of a flood emanating from, now that this has been lifted off, this flood is coming. Now what I mean by flood is an avalanche of information to make people who have refused to look at this issue, ignored it, stuck stubbornly to their ideals and their principles, those people are going to be hit with a flood of news articles, information, truths that will be impossible for them to ignore. What's happening through this manufactured ICE crisis is it is breaking open people's hearts. Now, just 7 days ago, I did a video where I talked about the overall spiritual purpose and what's happening with ICE.
Within this timeline or something. Sometimes 4 a.m.ers refer to multiple spirit guides, which show them visions of Harris's victory. For example, she wore a pinstriped purple pantsuit, or telling them which members of Trump's administration will eventually be persecuted. They, by the way, think it's going to be Pam Bondi, Marco Rubio, and Kirsten Noem.
Marco Rubio.
It's like when Q foresaw mass arrests of Democrats who would be sent to Guantanamo Bay and imprisoned for their crimes. I don't think you're going to find a 4 a.m. club scaling the side of the Capitol building anytime soon, since they believe they can bring down the federal government from their lineas. In one video, Gaia insists, quote, "We're toppling a regime via spiritual awakening," end quote. And this is another reason why mysticism is so bad, because it allows you to feel like you are doing something productive when you are doing nothing productive at all. When your actions and thoughts are not bounded by empirical evidence, you can believe that actions that are actually quite lazy and self-indulgent are making a positive difference in the world. Which, in addition to being A-grade crazy, is incredibly convenient. While they claim to be horrified by the political situation and feeling energy shifts that they have never felt before, the 4 a.m. Club's members want to feel purposeful without having to go outside. I think Susie's exactly right about this. They want permission to believe that their feelings are proof of a deeper truth, and they, just by believing them, they are going to save the world. Take, for instance, Gaia in her pajamas in her bed with her dog, or sitting in her car talking about the recent download she's gotten from Spirit and telling her followers that together they're, quote unquote, changing the course of history, end quote.
What we're doing is changing the course of history. Not just because we're going to change what happens going forward, but because we are changing what has already happened. That's what karma is. As we're looping through old cycles to say, we're not going to do that anymore. We will not accept this ever again. We are not what he says we are. We are not going to do what he wants us to do. We are going to stand together. We're going to say no. We're going to do it with love. I have been crying all morning, with these videos that you're tagging me in. You know, it was a pretty bold statement in March in my psychic preview session to say that we're going to clear the karma of war. That's a lot, but that's what Spirit said. That's what they showed me, and that's what I've been saying. And now that we're seeing this, it's easy to see now that, yeah, that is exactly what we're doing.
What happens if they don't? And what happens if their followers really listen to them? This toxic blend of New Age spirituality and conspiratorial thinking might lead you to say that you're receiving messages through tarot cards, the president is really dead, and that the government has put a body double in his place, which are other things that they have claimed. The truth is, Kamala Harris is hanging out with her nieces and sipping champagne at the Huma Biden Alexa Soros wedding. But loads of women are having visions of the, quote unquote, Lotus Queen, Madame President is waiting in the wings for her time to come out, end quote. Each time.
Well, you can do both. I mean, Huma Abedin marrying Alex Soros and Kamala Harris going to the Hamptons wasn't exactly something that would be discordant with this. But yeah, I mean, like, I guess they're assuming she's in some bunker planning and she's just chilling in the Hamptons at a fancy social wedding.
And this is a second part of this movement, which I plan to go into around the time of the inauguration. We just never really got timely down to filming it. But there was a really fascinating movement among Democrats leading up to the inauguration that they thought that Kamala had actually won. This was popular on TikTok with millions of views. And that the only reason they were letting the Republicans think that they had won or stolen the election was that they were trying to get as much evidence on them as they could, so that right before the inauguration happened, they would come up and start arresting all the, Trump and everyone else. And they thought that Kamala was giving people hints of this through various speeches she gave, where she would say things like, well, there's more to come, and even after this didn't happen, many of them doubled down and said, oh, no. They're just letting them get this feeling like they have power, like they actually won the election, like they're moving into the White House. So, they can get them all in one place. And so that they can, and this is really popular. So I know you look so confused.
Yeah. Although, QAnon also had some delusional views. And when you are reading some of this, and I think about what QAnon was doing, as much as QAnon pretended to be moored in reality and that these drops are coming from a real person, there was also a lot of coping and reasoning that was akin to mysticism and its flexibility.
Well, I think you catch something really big there, which is sort of key to modern conservatism versus key to modern far left culture. Is both of these movements, I think, represent elements of the same thing. It was not wanting to believe what had happened, and that there were people, with power in some way, like maybe it's mystical power, or maybe it's power within the government, who are sympathetic to your beliefs. And I actually know the guy in the Trump administration who was sort of like the core guy who was involved with 4chan related stuff. Not Q, but he was the senior official who actually engaged with 4chan culture and obviously like new right culture. And yeah, this stuff wasn't coming from within the administration. I mean, he found it entertaining and liked engaging with it as much as we do, but it's been really fascinating to me because QAnon, while it framed all this stuff without necessarily falsifiability, it framed it very much as, here are some breadcrumbs, go research the rest yourself, and through research you will discover what is true. Right. So it pushed the agency onto the individual much more.
Yeah.
And it said, this is all true. This is all real, but it's a conspiracy by people in, well, positions of power who are against you. Right. But you've got people on your side. And what's more important about QAnon is QAnon believed that it had people on its side who were doing things, who were setting things up, right? Like who were taking action. Whereas the 4am Club is very different from that. It's, this information comes from a mystical realm. It comes from mystical leaders. And while they are doing stuff, they are doing stuff in a spiritual sense. So if you watch their videos when they're talking about, okay, everything right now is going along the right path, which is what they'll say, when you watch them, because I've gone through the videos, they're like, everything's good. Everything's going to work out. This is all exactly according to my predictions. So when you watch these individuals, you get this perspective that things are being done, but the people who are doing them, they're not storming the Capitol. They're not doing it. They're just zoning out basically in front of their computer in their pajamas.
Yeah. Yeah. Also this unwillingness to accept reality for what it is. So just deciding to make up your own reality.
And I think
not great.
The final big takeaway I have from this is one thing we must always remember, because every time I go to see my car on election day, when we were out campaigning, we got somebody keyed our car, and we still have that there. So every time I see it, I'm just like, I hope this person's life is so bad now because we beat them. They're lazy bastards who act with such malice and prejudice, which they do, but these individuals are truly cooked, like brain cooked, like they are not happy. Their lives are not good. They are crazy cat ladies, and the deeper you dig within the existential horror that their existence is, and I'm not just talking about like the poor, crash outs or anything like that. I'm talking about their influencer class. I'm talking about their wealthy
elites. Yeah.
Because I've seen, like, if you talk about their influencer class and you're like, oh, things must be going well for them. There's a reason why, and this is actually an interesting thing if you watch online spaces, conservative influencers typically stay active for, I'd argue, about twice as long as progressive influencers, or maybe 3 times as long as progressive influencers. Whereas progressive influencers typically spin out. As they get more famous, they start posting less and less. And it's often because their mental health declines more and more and more.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're talking about. I can think of some examples here.
Yeah, well, everyone can think of examples here. The progressives who I used to watch, like, none of them post anymore. Whereas the conservatives I watched back in the day, they're all still pretty active. And I think that this is downstream of the mental toxicity of this perspective, especially when it's a perspective that can only justify its colonialist and imperialistic tactics of cultural erasure by framing itself as the victim, when, as soon as you realize, oh, we've been the big bad the entire time, the elites are on our side. I love it when they're like, oh, Trump was bought by elites because of like Elon. I'm like, bro, like, one, Trump said he was going to work with Elon. Like, when we voted, we knew that. Like, this isn't a surprise. That's not being bought by the elites. That's signaling your action. Kamala raised 3 times as much money as Trump, right? Like, where do you think she got that from, right? So I think that there is tacit realization from people who have any sort of connection to subjective reality that they have been on the side of the oppressive factions, and they've been on the side of the imperialistic factions, and the factions that were aligned with the elites within our existing system. And as that facade cracks, one of the easiest ways to not take accountability for your past actions, which is something I have had to do. I've had to say, look, I should have woken up sooner than I did, right? I should have been way more on the ball with this, and even intellectually honest with myself than I was. An example of this is something like the trans stuff, right? For the longest time, I was just like, I believe there probably is some real sort of a trans phenomenon, and that what is bad is gender transition of children, and that the adult trans movement is like completely legitimate and everything like that. And it took a while before I realized that, no, it's probably a culture bound illness and this isn't the best way to treat it. And people can look at me and they can say, well, a lot of people in your position, you have a lot of trans friends, you have a lot of friends within these communities, you could get attacked a lot for saying this. And this is a belief that changed while we were doing this podcast. But I can be like, yeah, but, for example, Scott Alexander admitted this back in his, member stealing witches post like a year before I did. And he's definitely more in that environment than I am. He's definitely around way more leftists and trans individuals than I am. So why was he able to come out about it, half a year before I was able to come out about it? And people are always like, oh, why are you so obsessed with this? And I'm like, children are being systematically mutilated. We are, how is this not a problem, right? Like if it has the unaliving rate that it have, and they target children like mine, children with autism, and my wife had not gender dysphoria, but dysphoria as a child with anorexia, why should I not expect it from our kids, right? Like why would this not be something that's ever present within my mind, that this could be something that's done to them? And it is something that has been done to. When people think, if you don't have a lot of like friends who are in sort of elitist culture, you might think of this as like being a far off phenomenon, but it has personally happened to two of our friends' kids, like without their knowledge. Like they go to a psychiatrist and they're given, without the parents' knowledge, drugs while they're minors. And so this is like, I think a much more close to home thing, where I was like, did I participate in that by not, as a quote unquote influencer, like raising my flag on this earlier? And so I need to take responsibility for that. And I think a lot of people do, right? Like we to be like, I was wrong, even with the evidence I had at hand.
Yeah, agreed. Coming to terms with the reality, even if it's kind of uncomfortable, is important. And that's why we like the idea of being offended so much, because you aren't offended by things if they're not a genuine threat to your worldview, and if you aren't really plausibly wrong about what you believe, because then there's nothing uncomfortable about it. You just know it's not true. When you are offended by something, it means that there's an inkling in you that suggests you might be wrong about this thing, that the thing that someone's asserting is maybe true. And if so, that's your sign to dig in, even if it's not comfortable. And I'm glad that we have a policy of digging into anything that might offend us, but not a whole lot offends me these days.
Yeah, we sort of dug all of those holes, and now there's not really a lot left.
We still get excited when we find opposing views, though. So we still just dig into stuff, even if it doesn't threaten us. So hopefully we'll still find those unknown unknowns.
I love you to death, Simone.
I love you too, Malcolm. Fat chance. Book publishers go so slowly. So I just don't think we can expect anything interesting there.
Oh my gosh, I love you so much. You're like, oh, I'm sorry for being late, and yet I'm addicted to my romance mangas.
So here I am paying our bills, handling our work. And you're
shove it, Simone.
Romance novels.
The only reason this happened is because all of the storytelling AIs have started to suck, and that's why I'm having to build my own, which is really so weird to, within my lifetime, see a technology degrade so quickly.
Oh, right. Like it started out so great and then
Like
suddenly
AI adventuring, like interactive models used to be really high quality, really addictive, really enjoyable, and they degraded in quality really quickly. And so we're trying to build alternatives, but
still remains like unconfirmed as to why their quality has degraded, right?
no, I told you why their quality degraded. It's fairly obvious. The two core models that were really good were
Mhm.
Try Spellbound AI, and then the other was GPT Flow. Try Spellbound somehow lost access to their model. They must have been outsourcing part of the model, and they lost access to whatever was making it good. And then
That's a mystery. Whatever it's making it good is a
no,
mystery.
it's the model that's making it good. They still have access to the token layer. What they lost access to was the literal model that somebody else trained and they were white labeling. That's very clearly what they meant by lost access. As to why they lost access, I'm going to assume it's because people were doing not safe for work scenarios on something that had raised VC money, which often causes them to close off. And
I
the
just
reason
wonder what the
GPT
good
Flow
model
got
is.
bad is because they retrained their model on too much horny stuff, and now it can only do horny scenarios and it can't do like a good isekai plot or anything like that.
Yeah.
That is why the systems have gotten so bad. And then for the other ones, they get bad because they get money from VCs, and then they will no longer do anything offensive, which is just not fun to play. You know, you can't have a post-apocalypse without slavery. You can't have a fantasy world without elf racism. You can't have, you know, all of these things that freak out AIs, which is why I'm excited to see Elon take Grok in the direction that he is, having it be not safe for work capable, because we'll be able to plug that into our system and potentially spice it up quite a bit into something quite interesting.
Favorable.
And what else did I learn that I was going to be like, oh, you'll find this interesting? I don't know. What I really appreciate the work that you've done today, Simone. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Malcolm.
And you will get away.
Go on, little one. Oh, there she goes.
It's following little Teddy. Trying to follow little Teddy. And come here. I'm over here. And he's following the teddy bear.
Oh, good. Go for it, Indy. Go, go, go.
Go, go, go.
You did it.
Come here now. Hello. Hello. Hello.
We'll move her toy box.
Yeah, and all the visitor toys.
Yeah.
Guys, he could trip on them, right?
Oh, well, as much as a crawling person can trip, for sure.
He's got it.
You did it,
He got
Indy.
the connection.
Yeah, you saying hello to Mr. Bear.
He really likes it.
Yeah. Well, everyone likes Mr. Bear. He's the most popular person in this house, isn't he?
Dad makes this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got the connection.
Yeah, she made it through out of her baby tunnel. Very exciting, little one. Yeah.
He really likes it.
Yeah. She
He
loves
got
Mr. Bear.
Got the connection right now.
Yeah.
Now you get some tickles.
You're getting tickles.
Connection. Because you got the connection. Because you got the connection.
Oh no! Tickles, tickles.
Oh no, it's the tickle monster. You really like more tickles. And the tickle monster gotcha. You really like it.
Oh yeah.